All right, what's up, y'all? Story time, motherfuckers. And this is one of the hardest stories ever. It's 3 or 4 different stories that all intertwine into one. It's gonna consist of me getting raided by the DEA. It's gonna consist of a rapist getting removed from our group. It's gonna consist of another individual from my group getting beat so severely that you won't be able to handle the details. Okay? And let me think, does it go anywhere else? So it's going to cover that. And then it's also going to cover a botched beat down hit that just went bad for these guys. So it's 4 different stories in one. And it involves about maybe 6 or 7 characters. All right? So where do I start with this story? All right, so back in the 90s, before my son was born, I lived in Crystal, Minnesota, the same place where that cop was fucking with me, right? In the traffic stop. And, I was up to no good. And I was always kind of paranoid, you guys. So I would always barricade my door every time I went to sleep. Actually, damn near every time I came in the door, but definitely at night. What I would do is I would set like a weight bench without the thing that holds the bars, like a flat weight bench. I would set that one end against the door and the other end would go against, it would brace against the wall. And it was like a perfect fit where it had like maybe an inch of play in between, right? And it was like the best barricade ever. So I really didn't have a reason to feel like this, you guys. I wasn't like making moves out of my crib or around that area, right? But what had happened is the plug, the plug was like major, like connected with them guys in Tijuana, right? So he could get anything. And this is back in the 90s, right? And they would front it to him. They'll front him loads. This is how they operate, right? He had a DEA officer on his payroll. I don't know if he was just giving him coke or what, but the DEA officer wasn't a drug dealer, to my knowledge. He was a drug facilitator, where he would just make sure his packages would come in correctly, and he would make sure that he tried to keep him undetectable by other law enforcement, but that shit did not work, right? So we're not going to get into the story about the cop much, but it's a good story because I can't, it's just too long of a story, man. But the cop is corrupt as fuck and he ends up dead in 2006. He's one of my homie's stepfathers, and my homie ended up getting murdered off the same drugs that his stepfather facilitated to come to us through a major connect. I'm not getting into that story. That's not what this is about. I've already told that story. It's in the Mark Moriarty story. It's on my playlist. I'll tell it again, but I'm not intertwining it with this one. So the DEA officer, corrupt as shit, right? My homie's stepdad. So I end up getting raided by the DEA, but it's not him. This is already a situation that's past and gone. I get raided by the DEA. It's like 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. Boom, boom, boom. They're thumping on the door. I feel like they opened the door with a key, because there wasn't really any play to even kick the door in. That little inch, the door the shit would have flexed that much and it just wouldn't have collapsed, right? So I think they opened the door with a key thinking they were just going to gain instant access, and then couldn't get in and started thumping on the fucking door. And I'm like, oh shit, I pop up. I'm like, oh, that's the police. That's the police. So I run out in the living room. I see them trying to get in the door. And I run out on the balcony. I'm about to scale down 3 stories down the balcony in my boxers and run, right? But I'm like, wait a minute. Everything's on my bed. I can't run. There's like a solid case sitting on my bed. So I run back in the apartment. I take everything and I throw it out the window from the 3rd floor. I start throwing it all out the window, and I throw the banger up onto the roof, and it ends up landing on top of the roof, right? Because I'm on the 3rd floor. So I throw it, and it fucking, boom, lands up on top. Everything else goes down. But when I ran out onto the balcony, one police officer ran down all the stairways, and he was like coming out and caught like the end of, I think, me throwing shit out the window, right? So they're thumping on the door, and there's a woman sleeping on my couch, right? She, I think, moved the barricade, because they're like, move the fuck, let us in, I could hear a lot of that going on, and I just assumed they were talking to me, but at a certain point, they were talking to her. She gave into their demands and moved the weight bench. There's no other way they could have got in. So she must have moved the weight bench. They came running in and found nothing except for, it was either $6,500 or $7,500. I don't know why, I just don't remember that, you guys, but it was one of the two. And the last thing I remember before they got in was looking at my wad of money, knowing that I cleared the whole crib, but knowing I was never going to see it again. No matter where I did with it, no matter, once they found it, no matter what, I knew I was never going to see it again. And that's, so boom, I throw it in the drawer. Don't even hide it, really. I just throw it in the drawer. I should have tried to hide it better. But they probably were going to find it anywhere. There's probably maybe 1 or 2 places I could have really hid it if I would have had it pre-planned, right? So I get raided by the DEA, right? And the IRS. And they're like, because somebody else is doing, right? But I'm dirty too. But the IRS ain't on me. They're on dude. Like, I don't have houses and properties and all kinds of shit. Like, I'm not balling off this shit.